Ladies and gentlemen, here we are in the game. In the top right-hand corner from the team Complexity, it is the legend himself of strategic and master-minded play, QXC, in the purple. His opponent down in the bottom left-hand corner, clad in the blue, none other than Moonglade.
Okay, so let's see here now, as this is a little bit larger map than we saw last time, and we are spawning cross positions, so it could lend itself to a nice long macro game. Although QXC does like getting in there with damage, we saw in the last one he's completely fine with playing that greedy 3-base mech style too.
Now, I actually saw a game of QXC's recently on this, and he opted to just go for really quick 3 bases and kind of turtled up for a very long time on Marine Tank. I'll be anxious to see if it's, you know, a very favorited play style of his on this particular map with this matchup. Zerg versus Terran, of course, in Tube Valley, can last for quite some time. Drops and such are very effective, but it's just so easy for everybody to turtle on this map, whether you're Zerg or Terran. It's easy for Zerg to spread out onto the map. Once you get down that initial ramp, pretty much the entire middle is really flat.
Well, given what we saw out of Moonglade last time, what do you think QXC has to do to try and get his way back into this set?
Well, you know, his mech play was pretty solid. It was just that Moonglade went for 2 bases initially, and it really allowed him to power out those mutas while not sacrificing upgrades. He did not have to commit too much money into, you know, the extra drones and such for the third. So I was a little surprised that QXC, we didn't see a heavy reaction out of him, although his opponent was only on 2 bases. Would have loved to see, you know, just, okay, all right, you're on 2 bases, so I'm just going to waste some money on turrets and bunkers just in case. Or even, you know, wall off supply depots. Because he was in such an economic lead, he could have afforded to throw away some money just to guarantee his position. But instead, we saw him continue to try to play a little bit greedy, if you will, and he really just got killed by that big play out of Moonglade where he just had so much.
Yes, he did, and Moonglade knew when to jump in and do the exact amount of economic damage that was required to hold back the strategy. I mean, he killed those 15 SCVs with those Mutilisks at exactly the same time the QXC was moving up to factories 4 and 5. So he'd invested 300 resources, or 250 resources into each of those, but wasn't able to really get any sort of substantial benefit from it, as he couldn't take advantage of the increased production.
Yeah, definitely really good points there, because that was kind of the point where he died. I mean, he'd lost so much to those Mutilisks, and I mean, 15 workers is just incredible. So I would really like to see QXC respond more, but right now he's going to be unable to do exactly that, Kevin, as he loses his scouting SCVs to some drones that are transferring down to the natural.
Amusing. You don't often see that strong of a drone response right there. You mentioned before in the last game, though, that Zerg players are a little more confident about throwing down those earlier transferring drones, and that was a lot of them. I mean, that was 10 of them. Usually you still see only 5 or 6 transferred over, but Moonglade doesn't do things at half measures, apparently.
You know, realizing is they're in cross positions, and it is an extremely long distance for QXC to apply any pressure. It seemed like Moonglade is just very comfortable with saying, and that he's up 1 in the series. You know, it's not so likely your opponent's going to cheese you here, so the transfer feels a lot more comfortable with it. Zerglings right now, guys, going to be chasing this SCV, and you know what? Now, this is no scouting information right now for QXC. He may be forced to blow that 530 scan in order to get some information here, because as far as he's concerned, Moonglade could have taken a really quick greedy third right now and not even bothered with those defensive roaches that are really common.
And QXC, I mean, despite the fact that he went for a 1-Rax gasless fast expand rather than a command center first, is still working down basically the same path. Double gas, factory coming up, reactor, we're going to see a starport afterwards, more than likely, and he'll start to move back into that predictable 3-base strategy. Now, whether that's going to be mech or whether he decides to prioritize bio in a bit, you know, remains to be seen, but I would expect QXC would take a pretty similar approach.
I like right now that QXC is sending this SCV down the right-hand side to go check out that third, assuming that is, of course, where it's going. You know, you want to make sure that Moonglade is not responding too aggressively to the fact that he knows that you have no information. So QXC going to pop up there. He sees no creep. He says, okay, all right, yeah, I haven't seen anything, but it seems like you're still playing standard.
And he's going for, or I should say Moonglade is going for, another 6-queen build. This is exactly the same thing he did last time. For gas coming up, he's got 6 queens in total. A little bit harder to secure your 3rd base here than on Cloud Kingdom because of the destructible rocks. If you're going for that 6-queen builds, you need some way to be able to knock those down. But he's already doing a nice job of spreading the creep over there and making sure that it's going to be as short of a walk distance as possible while he gets all his tech in place. And if he follows the same path he did last time with the first 100 gas, we'll start to see that layer right away.
First few Hellions heading out right now for QXC. They're going to make their way to the middle of the map and not going to bother with the Zergling. They want to, oh, no, do turn around. I was going to say, maybe they just wanted to really get in there quickly, try to deny the next line of creep tumors, which actually Moonglade isn't going to throw out. It seems like he's going to be going for a lair tech for now, and he's just going to be happy with, you know, sitting tight for the moment. He's got his economy pretty much full force. He just needs a couple more drones to be fully saturated.
Well, if he does the same thing, we're going to see 2 evolution chambers, a macro hatch, a baneling nest, and a, you know, there's the macro hatch. We'll see the other upgrades here in a second. There's the double evolution chambers, there's the baneling nest, and we'll get Zergling speed. So this is identical to what we saw last game. He'll probably take a 9-something minute third base, but it'll disrupt perfectly the strong Hellion Banshee push that QXC wants to do with those 6 queens in position already.
No, that's I mean, Miss Cleo would be proud right now, Kevin. That's probably how things are going to play out. But, you know, we'll get to see if anything really interesting gets thrown into the mix. Hellions don't manage to kill off that creep tumor. Now they're going to be heading up, checking for that third once again, which we've seen that Moonglade is actually very comfortable with taking pretty late. I mean, it's evident at this point. He's okay with being on 2 bases for a little while.
Yes, he is, especially with a Spire coming up. There it is. Spore Crawlers to defend against any Banshees that may be flying around and trying to disrupt things. There's the Banshee. Now, here's the big difference in QXC. He is going for the biomech strategy, swapping onto barracks afterwards and making sure that he reinvests back into his engineering base, upgrades, and a little bit different approach than the mech strategy we saw last time.
Now, here's that quick third again, as well as the Hellions are going to be thwarted by these queens. So it is looking like QXC going, yep, the double engineering bay as well. Basically, he just turtles up on 3 bases for a while and just lets the upgrades go, lets the upgrades continue to go, lets the Zerg push if they so desire. So I'll be looking for Moonglade to play very aggressive in his expansion, in his economy, to capitalize on the fact that QXC is likely just going to shell up for a while here with between the fast third and the double engineering bay.
I've got to say, I'm so impressed with Moonglade's play thus far. He's really had a counter for pretty much anything that QXC has done. He's been able to execute his strategy freely. QXC essentially using this as a scout. He can't get close to the Spore Crawler, and he's not going to kill that many workers. He'll pick up on the third base, but that's about all this Banshee's going to do. Yeah,
he'll start firing on it, but the Zerglings have killed the back rocks now, so the Queens will be able to rapidly move into position in order to save it. I expect it maybe to lose up to half of its health, but probably between that and only a quarter. Behind this, QXC is mobilizing some forces, it does appear, and we see some things moving out to the front, but other than that, I mean, it's just the Queen's chasing away this Banshee and both players kind of just ramping things up. We can see upgrades are finishing, getting ready to finish here for Moonglade.
You're absolutely right, and so there's 6 mutas popping out now, a little bit less than the 9 he started last game, but he doesn't quite have the gas to go around, as it looks like he was a bit quicker to go into his baneling speed, Zergling speed, etc. But back on QXC side, he's taking out his own destructible rocks, he's getting a strong army in place, and he's going to want to engage this a little bit differently. But of course, Moonglade, what has he seen out of his opponent? Looks like he knows the bio strategy is there, so he's appropriately altering things, not likely to see that huge roach push like we did last time.
So many upgrades on the way right now for QXC. Stim and combat shields are going to finish relatively at the same time. +1/+1 a little bit afterwards. So, you know, with all these timings being pretty well synchronized, there is the possibility of a little bit of a push here from QXC. But honestly, I just don't expect it because, well, unless we do see that quick fourth, a unit heading over there right now, and that might be the response on a Moonglade. Yeah, fourth is going to go down. So this leaves the ball in QXC's court with his relatively quick fourth once again. These players are kind of playing macroeconomic chicken with each other, if you will, right now.
It's not a bad comparison to make, honestly. As, you know, I mean, this is a really nice time for Moonglade to hit with all these mutas as well. Probably could take out those 2 Marines, but of course more are starting to catch up now. So Moonglade with 6 mutas in the air, adding on another 5, going up to a 4th base. He's pinned in a biomech Terran player, which is very advantageous for him, as you would expect the Terran player to start getting pretty active on the map. Just little squads sending out, trying to harass with the Hellions that he still has left, trying to get out there and doing some damage with drops, but none of that has happened yet.
Mutas do find the Hellions, but Hellions can always evade those Mutalisks, because the second they even have to fire on you, they do have to stop in order to throw those glaive worms out. If they threw them while they were moving, probably just shoot them backwards or something of that nature. So, an understandable mechanic. The Hellions are going to be back in the main base now, so QXC is pretty much out of harassment options at this point. He's really all that he's got in front of him is to push out or to just sit up and turtle, and well, I'm not surprised to see him sitting tight. This is a great map for it, and it is what it seems to be his comfort zone on Entomb Valley.
And it's not a bad idea. I mean, we talked about before that so many Terran players are just pushing towards that late game. And QXC is going to need time to put that in place. He did delay his upgrades a little bit, prioritizing more barracks before he put down his engineering base. He loses a couple of Hellions here in the middle of the map. So he's back in upgrades, as we see 2-2 just about to finish up for Moonglade. He doesn't really have a foothold as far as doing damage with drops or any sort of harassment. So now he just needs to sit back, turtle, get his 4th base, and start playing towards that very late game.
Like the QXC's 4th is already completed, we can see he's lifting it off and flying it over towards the 4th base, but Moonglade may be gearing up for somewhat of an attack. Currently sitting at 180 supply, he is near maxed out. Medevac is trying to make something happen over at this 5th base, but Lings and Banes seem to be in position here, Kev.
Yeah, it literally went directly over the hatchery, and hatchery does not have that much vision, in fact, hardly any at all, but it does see what flies directly over it. Now, QXC has to watch out as there's a lot of Mutalisks in place to try and take out this drop. He's not doing any other action on the map yet with the rest of his forces. This is all just going to go down pretty cost-effectively here for Moonglade.
Nice attention to detail out of Moonglade, and nothing less than we would expect from a pro player. Kiting in and out with those Mutalisks to make sure that the Marines don't have an opportunity to target down 100 gas and 100 minerals worth of unit.
Guys, QXC is really good. I just want to put that out there. He's a great player, but Moonglade has just been thrilling me with how good his Zerg play has been so far in this set. And I know he's a popular player, and I know he's had some great success in the past, but I didn't know how he would stack up against the competition for this World Championship qualifier. But to me, he's looking like a guy to beat.
Yeah, very impressive. Right now coming in with a massive Ling Bane Muta bust. And this is a great time to make this attack because you want to start making the transition to Broodlords after this, or maybe Infestor plays. We do see the Infestation Pit finishing up, but here comes the attack all from one angle. Muta's going to be, look at these tanks completely out of position right now. So easy for the Mutas to kill. Bailey's going to be chasing away all the Marines, and a devastating attack by Moonglade on QXC. He's going to do so much damage here.
Crippling damage. He takes out the 4th base. He's now killed 8 workers. On top of that, he decimated his opponent's army. And look at the bank of resources he has left over. Already being poured into 62 Zerglings. He just needs to let the rest of his injects catch up here. As that may have been the only part where he slipped, it looks like, on a couple of his injects. But other than that, looks like things are just great for him for now. Hive Tech on the way. We'll start to see the transition up to Greater Spire. He's already putting in his +1 attacks for his air units. And QXC, he's got to get something done now, and he knows it.
He really does, Kevin, and it looks like he's going to be pushing out pretty slowly, which, you know, the longer he gives, you can see 30 Zerglings on the way right now, +1 nearing completion. The clock is ticking, and QXC is on the wrong side of that.
He does have a decent amount of resources to pour back into units, though, and he's recovering pretty quickly, but he's supply blocked, and that is actually pretty critical right now, especially as his whole army gets collapsed on once again. Moonglade going to be able to clean this up pretty effectively. A few tanks did join at the back, and it looks like that's doing a nice job of taking out the ground forces, but in the end, Moonglade's still going to kill pretty much everything on the field.
Things looking incredibly good right now for Moonglade, but now he is down to 140 supply, but I think he's just waiting for that Hive Tech to finish up. He can start up his Greater Spire, and if he sees QXC suddenly come up with a miracle army, okay, all right, I make a lot of Zerglings really quick. But yeah, for now, I think he's just going to sit back, get that Hive Tech units out, and then try to wrap this game up. QXC, what does he need to do from here? I mean, we see he's grabbing the 4th base, but how many other options does he really have?
I think he's trying the right thing. He wants to get out on the map and drop a little bit. The little task forces of units have not proven to be all that efficient for him so far, and Moonglade, he looks like he's going to pick up on this right away. Oh my god, he's actually sitting in the position of it. QXC loses the drop, and Moonglade, I don't know. This guy can do no wrong.
He didn't even see that medevac leave. What?
Yeah.
Hey, QXC, I just killed your whole army. I know you can't move out, so you're probably going to come for a drop on my 5th base. So let me just put some mutas right here, because that might be where you're going to walk by.
Wow, Moonglade on top of his game right now. Let's see if QXC can do anything to rally back against this. His whole army gets picked up on by those Mutalisks again, which check around the banana hallway. They see this force coming out. Moonglade's already getting in position. You talked about if you see QXC running across the map, you can instantly produce an army of Zerglings, and that's what he's done. He obviously wants to save all of his resources for top-tier tech, but I think he can afford that for now.
So imminent engagement most likely here, because QXC can't pick up and go home. That's the thing. He's too far extended now. It looks like Moonglade, you know, he doesn't feel like, okay, I don't have to attack this second into this army. It's in a nice siege position, but he can't go home. QXC cannot return home with this army if he tries to pick it up. Oh, there are reinforcements coming, and Moonglade catching onto it is going to intercept these. Only half of QXC's army right now engaging against the full blunt force of Moonglade's massive army of Zerglings. A nice pickup, though, by QXC. That was he gets a lot of units up onto the high ground here. Maybe able to rejoin some forces, but no, the Mutas, they're just going to pick off what's left.
And QXC's thinking about crawling forward a little bit. He does start to stim up some Marines. It looks like he's going to attack 2 bases at the same time. And we'll see if this buys him the damage that he needs to start to equalize. The Marines are all stimmed up. They're going to get themselves in a very nice spot here and will be able to pretty efficiently deal with a lot of Zerglings that come through. But once those Banelings hit along with the Infestors, it's not going to be great. He does manage to kill 1 base at the very least. It starts to inflict some economic damage and has reestablished his force. So QXC is certainly not out of this yet. He does have a very, very powerful army. Unfortunately for him, though, he's maxed out, and there are Broodlords out, and he has no Vikings on the map.
Oh, yeah, that is very detrimental to QXC's ability to deal with this composition out of Moonglade. Moonglade going to be able to clean up some of these forward Marines. A lot of the harass that we just saw QXC do, where he killed off the base and such, would have liked to see him do it while that big engagement was going on, because the units would not have been able to reply at this fort. It may already be dead. Zergling's going to be coming in now, guys, as the Mutas continue to kite. Very nice Muta control thus far out of Moonglade, actually throughout this entire series out of Moonglade. But now the Broodlords arrived, and as you said, Kevin, he's got no reply to these at all. Very first Vikings are just being started. And
Moonglade is making quite a few Corruptors at the moment, but, you know, still letting a little bit of his resources get away from him. Strategically, he's been very good, but at times, you know, he's been trying to bank resources and has let, his macro slip a bit. I think he could take about 5 drones and just plant down hatcheries everywhere on the map just to make sure that he has subsequent bases and delays his opponents. It's not that big of an investment for him now. A great catch of forces here. He's actually running around both sides. He's got to make sure he doesn't get these Broodlords caught out in the open, though, and it looks like he won't. The rest of these Marines are going to fall.
These small victories from Moonglade have continued to add up throughout this entire series. Whether it be SCVs or Marines that he's killing off, he's always doing it in an extremely cost-efficient and good situation to bring him ahead. Now we're seeing QXC drop his 5th base, and he is doing very well economically. I want to point that out. I'm just a little afraid for his composition.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Moonglade, there we go. 11 more Corruptors started. I was about to say he banked a ton of resources and was back in supply, but now with all these Broodlords coming out, he's going to have quite the army to be able to fight back against this. QXC himself dropping down a few additional command centers so we can eventually put down more orbital commands, sacrifice some SCVs, go over to more of an attack army, and he is adding on Thors and additional Vikings. But the problem is he's only going to have 6, I believe. Yeah, Vikings when these 2 are done. There's going to be 11 Corruptors and 13 Broodlords on the map.
This is such a massive army out of Moonglade. I cannot see how QXC is going to be able to deal with this. You know, he's got 68 Marines, but 4 Vikings. About to be 6, but 6 single-digit Vikings versus 15 Broodlords. This is going to be tough.
And also important to note, Moonglade consciously keeping himself at only 53 drones. So with that, it means he has a staggeringly large army. It's additional about 30 supply than you would normally see out of a Zerg player at this stage of the game. So he starts to siege up his opponent. QXC's dropping at the same time. He gets one of those drops cleaned up. The second one is going to take out a hatchery, however, but does he have enough to rally back against this force up in the front?
We're about to find out. Vikings, already half of them killed off. That's the grand total right there, guys. Infestors are kind of just sitting in the back waiting for those, the massive Marine count that we saw, you know, 68 of them to come in, and then you'll see the Fungals. As of now, it looks like Moonglade has also held off the harassment at his 4th base, so he's really got nothing going on at this point except for this fight. Vikings doing good kiting, but here comes the army of Moonglade going to be able to fully commit with these Corruptors. There's no sorts of air splash damage, no secret missiles, nothing of that nature out of QXC.
Okay, well, Moonglade cleaning up the rest of the air-to-air. Well, there is still a Thor and a lot of Marines on the ground. The Banelings not really finding the right time to move in effect, just kind of sacrifice them. These tanks have actually done some very good work at the back, but nothing can combat the Broodlords, and it doesn't really matter what happens to the Banelings on the ground. That's it. That's GG. QXC goes down 2-0. Moonglade advancing into the round of 8.
An excellently played game there. And, you know, throughout the entire thing, I mean, Moonglade, it's what we've been seeing out of him. He's just in control. He's never like, oh, I don't know what's going on right now, I'm losing bases. In fact, I almost feel like when he was losing those bases in the bottom right, it was like, hey, let me get rid of a couple of your Marines and have you make some medevacs just for my convenience because I've only got 53 drones. I don't really need that base right now.
That's right, and he does it perfectly. I mean, what a convincing performance there out of Moonglade, I have to say. I'm very impressed with that. So that's our first set of the night. Like we mentioned before, we had scheduled for 3 sets. We're only going to have 2 for you, as unfortunately Idra did forfeit to Axlav, so Axlav gets a walkover into the round of 8, but we still have Root Cats versus Acer Scarlet to go. So we're going to run to a commercial break, and when we get back, it'll be time for that first game of our next best of 3.